This is CNN Breaking News.
Hi, I'm Chris Cuomo, and welcome to Primetime. We have breaking news on our watch. An internal CDC document argues the Delta variant is spreading faster and with more illness than anticipated. The headline, according to the Washington Post, the vaccinated may be as contagious as the unvaccinated when it comes to transmission. Now, we still need to see the data that created this conclusion. But we do know that government scientists were apparently so alarmed by the new research that the agency issued its new guidance before making that data public. Now, I submit to you that was a mistake. We trust the government, but we must verify. That's how this must work. We need the data that fuels these conclusions now. According to the Washington Post, the data will show the Delta variant spreads more quickly than the common cold and causes more severe illness than even if you are vaccinated. You can still transmit it. Now, we knew that. What we did not know is that there's a chance that the vaccinated can transmit it the way the unvaccinated do, but there is something called viral load that you've heard before that they say can be equal in people whether or not they've had the vaccine. Now, in terms of symptoms of the host, being vaccinated still matters. But this is an alarming headline. Also, the best defense to getting the Delta variant and what level of transmission you may cause is still taking the vaccine. And the reason we are where we are and why this variant is changing and becoming more virulent is not the CDC. Unvaccinated, period. That's why I'm going to commit my show going forward, tonight as well, obviously, to tracking efforts to beat the variant. This is going to be a COVID command center of sorts, okay? And the most important stat to start with is the number of unvaccinated. They are the ones compromising the majority of you who have made, you're of all places and faces in politics, you've made the decision to protect yourselves and your families and others, and they haven't. A third of the country that is eligible to be vaccinated has not been. Now, that does include those 12 years old and older. President Biden put the number at 90 million people today who could be vaccinated and are not. Too many are making that choice for bad reason. Too many in power are feeding a new farce that staying unprotected, unvaccinated, is somehow a perverse move of freedom. And that changing guidance proves that the government is up to no good. No. Too many in this country have made choices that are no good. We've allowed the virus to change, and now we are all headed backwards. The question is how far and how long? So now, again, the majority of you that has made the sacrifices and gotten vaccinated, you are having your freedom stepped on because of those who believe freedom is about putting other people at risk. They and their enablers seem determined to make America sick again. And that's why we are here. And here, in terms of the statistics, here's where we are. We're at more than 64,000 new cases just today. That puts us back a year, literally 1 year ago on this day, that's where we were. Why? The vaccine. I'll make this point clearly and in two different ways. You find low vaccination rates in this country, you find cases, specifically in the Southeast, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Florida alone, now big state, number 3 state, right, makes up a huge chunk of the new cases. They've been in the top 5 for new cases going back to April. Now, if you look, you'll see that there's some toxic politics that have gone along with that. Don't Fauci Florida and all this other stuff. And now he's anti-mask down there, the governor. I get the political play. It works with the Trump fold, but it's making people sick. You could say that, look, they have a big population, okay? So they're going to have bigger numbers. But the positivity is way outpacing the rest of the country, okay? Which is why they have more people in the hospital than they did at any time this year. It's a scene playing out across the entire region. It's not just Florida. But you have to look at where you have the most cases, and you'll see the lowest percentages of vaccination and the highest rates of transmission, okay? If you focus on that same group of states, you see it's almost all red down there. Look at the TV or the phone or whatever you're watching on. What does that mean? Red means more virus in circulation. 71% of us are living in counties with high or substantial COVID transmissions. Only 1% of us are living in low transmission areas. Now, look where cases are climbing fastest, and you'll see the trend. Okay? It's all the same part of the country. It's not a coincidence. Less people vaccinated, more virus in circulation, more cases, okay? And more cases more quickly. So that's where we are, which also helps point to where we are going. The CDC says adjusting for population in these smaller states, we're talking about cases per 100,000 people. Alabama has one of the worst vaccination rates. There, we're talking about 1,000 new cases a day. You got to compare that to Vermont, okay, in the Northeast. One of the best vaccination rates, there are about 60 new cases a day. Now think about that. Not just in terms of what it means in exponential thread, but in strain on the healthcare system, strain on the local economy, strain on families, strain on schools. It's a cascade effect. That's how we got into the suck. It wasn't just one thing, okay? 1,000 to 60. All right, that's the difference the vaccination makes. The vaccine can give you freedom. Look, it's not perfect. And in fact, it's becoming increasingly imperfect. How much so? I don't know. And I do not believe the findings of the Washington Post, all due respect, until I see the data. I believe the headline or I wouldn't repeat it. I believe the reporting or I wouldn't share it. But we have to see the data that supports it. But if it spooked the scientists there, it should get our attention as well. We have a lot of new information to process. Let's bring in a better mind. Dr. Jerome Adams, former U.S. Surgeon General of the United States of America under President Trump. Good to see you, Doc.
Good to see you, Chris.
What do you make of this news?
Well, I think it's important to start off by saying the vaccines work to do the number one thing that people should care about, and that's keeping them out of the hospital or the morgue. So vaccines work, and I want to thank you for emphasizing that point. Now, you talk about this new information that is in the Washington Post article. What's interesting is you have to juxtapose that with what you just told us. We clearly see that in places where you have lower vaccination rates, you have more spread. So that just tells you that the vaccines are working to an extent to lower spread. And it may be that people who are vaccinated can have equivalent viral loads in certain circumstances. It may be that they aren't as infectious for as long of a time. To your point, we need to see the data. But I want people to understand that no matter what the data says, it's clear that vaccines work to protect you personally. And from a community point of view, they also are working to cause a lower amount of spread in places that have higher vaccination rates than places that have lower vaccination rates.
Now, Doctor, a big part of the purpose of this reporting, according to the Washington Post, was a discussion of messaging and the agency of those in leadership within the CDC about what should be said. We have a lot, especially on the right side of the political aisle, of people saying, look, the vaccine's safe, but you don't have to take it. The vaccine's safe, but nobody can make you take it. The vaccine's safe, but you're free. Do what you want. Is it time for those in power to start changing the messaging, to not making it an equal proposition of take it or not take it, but to present the facts the way you are right now, that in the overwhelming percentage of us, the vaccine is safe and it's something we should do, not just consider doing?
Well, I want to commend Governor Kay Ivey for her strong talk to the people in in her state. And to answer your question in a word, yes, we need to help people understand that this freedom argument is bunk. I mean, at the end of the day, we are losing freedoms because people are unvaccinated. And I don't want to shame anyone who has questions, because every day I talk to people. I've talked to at least 5 people today who had questions and help them get their questions answered and move them towards vaccinations. But people need to understand the real consequences. And the consequences are, as I said last week, more mitigation. And as I'm telling you this week, I'm predicting closures in the future, because we are not going to be able to rein this variant back in before we get enough spread that's going to start causing closures again. And so I don't want my kids to have to go through another year of virtual school. I don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed and for them to be shut down for elective surgeries like we saw last year. Our freedoms are being impinged upon because we have far too many people unvaccinated.
This is a tyranny of the unvaccinated right now. There's no question about it. I mean, they get all the attention, but it's really the vaccinated who are Republicans and Democrat, red and blue states, different faces from different places. They've all made the right call for themselves and protected themselves and others, and now they're going to have their freedoms abridged because of this other group of people. But I want to clarify something you said, Doc. Do you believe we're going to see closures no matter what? Or if that 90 million, to use President Biden's number, if we get at least half of them vaccinated or some percentage of them, is there a strike percentage where no, then there won't be closures, things can be okay? Is there some kind of equation?
At this point, if you look at the trajectory of the Delta variant in India and in the UK, and you look at how we are busting the curve compared to where they were, not in a good way, I do expect that you're going to see closures in certain places because healthcare systems are already starting to be overwhelmed. And I just want to be honest with people, and that's one of the problems we've had, Chris, is that we always want to sugarcoat it for people. We always don't want to scare people, but this Delta variant is really, really nasty. It is very different than the COVID that we dealt with last year. And just as in a week, we went from no mask to all of a sudden everyone saying that this is where we're going. There are going to be closures, but what we want to do is make those closures as minimal as possible and as short as possible. And we have the tools to do it. And that's what kills me. That's what kills me is we have the tools, vaccines, mitigation, testing, and treatment. Not enough people know about monoclonal antibodies. We have tools that I didn't have last year when I was Surgeon General talking to people about COVID. And we just need to make use of these tools so that we can get this virus under control. And the final thing people need to understand is we're going to be living with this for a while. It's time for us to put on our big boy and big girl pants and understand that this virus isn't going to go away. I think the Biden administration and our administration also wanted to declare victory, wanted to say that this thing was over once we had vaccines. But the truth is the American people need to know we're going to be living with COVID for a while, and we can live with it, but we all need to pull together and use the tools that God has given us, the miracles God has given us to overcome this terrible pandemic.
Now, I don't want to be too much of a cynic. We did see Mitch McConnell today put out an ad in Kentucky where he actually uses some of your own wording in terms of it's nothing short of a modern medical miracle. Take the vaccine. If it works for you, talk to your doctor. You should do it. That's rare air on the political right. Did you see their response to the mask mandate? This is CDC bunk. This is liberal government overreach. It's based on junk studies. There's no reason for masks. What do you say for people who are pushing that message much more than anything you just said?
Well, what I would say, number one, is unfortunately humans tend to be reactionary. They always wait until the last minute and then try to cram for the exam. And I really do think that people are seeing the freedoms that are being impinged upon or will be infringed upon by this variant. And what I want to do is accentuate the positive. I want to compliment the people who've come out. I want to compliment Sean Hannity. I've never talked about Sean Hannity before, good or bad, for coming out and telling people to get vaccinated. Mitch McConnell, all the governors, including Kay Ivey, who've come out and said, get vaccinated. We need to emphasize the positive because a Kaiser Family Foundation poll showed us that there's still a significant number of the unvaccinated who are in the movable middle, if you will. They just need to get their questions answered. They need the right motivations to get vaccinated. And I actually want to applaud President Biden. I watched his whole press conference today, and he talked about getting pop-up vaccination clinics in schools, which is actually something I recommended to Congress during testimony last week. He talked about work sites. If you can really focus on work sites and schools, those are two big places where we can get some of these people in the movable middle vaccinated. And then the commander-in-chief actually acted as employer-in-chief today, and as the head of the federal government put out new guidance regarding vaccinations for the federal government. And that, along with the NFL, and I've been talking with the NFL too, set the stage for many other employers out there to feel comfortable getting more aggressive about encouraging vaccinations and mitigation. And that is a good thing, Chris.
Policy and messaging question, and I appreciate you, Doctor. The policy question. Mandating on the federal level or even private businesses, moving into locality schools. How, when the FDA hasn't approved the vaccines yet?
Well, that is a concern that I've continued to bring up. And I want people to understand the science is there. We know these vaccines are safe and efficacious. The FDA is now looking at the final part of the process, which is manufacturing and distribution. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why that's supposed to take 6 months for us to get an answer, and neither can many of the scientists and experts out there. And I talked to lawyer after lawyer after lawyer had a phone call with a big corporate lawyer today who said, look, companies are still scared to mandate a vaccine that is not fully licensed. But what you saw the government do, and people, your viewers need to understand this, this is not a mandate that President Biden put in place or that the NFL put in place. They said, we're employers and we're going to give you a choice. And your choice is either to show us proof of vaccination so we can protect the workplace, or it's to subject yourself to these other measures which will allow us to protect the workplace, more testing, wearing masks in more places. And I think that's appropriate. And I think we gave workplaces cover to understand you've got some choice and you actually need to get involved so that you don't get shut down again.
Is it too late? Are too many people too dug in on bad politics and where they've said, they want to be on this up till this point? Are too many minds made up?
Chris, absolutely not. And here's the thing. There are still over 500,000 people getting vaccinated every single day. It's not as fast as we want it to be, but there are people every day making the decision to get vaccinated. And if you're one of those people out there, thank you. Thank you for getting your questions answered, for doing your part. And we shouldn't shame people for having questions. Again, a lot of people, African Americans, are under-vaccinated, but carry with them a lot of mistrust of government. We need to build that trust. It is not too late. We still can turn things around through, again, smart policies in the workplace, smart policies at schools, the right incentives, and trust. And the people who are never going to get vaccinated, well, even those people who say they're never going to get vaccinated, a lot more of them have gotten vaccinated. That number is getting smaller and smaller as people get experience with the virus, both good and bad. But it's important also to know that we shouldn't be focusing on them. If they're never going to get vaccinated, they're never going to get vaccinated. The number of people who say right now they're never going to get vaccinated is 14% of America. That means if 86% of America is at least willing to think about that prospect, and that's who we should be focusing on, trying to figure out how we can get their questions answered, overcome barriers, get shots in doctors' offices, because people trust their doctors, and encourage people to go and seek out those answers to those questions they have.
Doctor, this was very helpful. Thank you very much. We're going to be doing this every night until we get a handle on this. So former Surgeon General Dr. Adams, you are welcome here whenever you can make it to help us contextualize what's happening in our country and how we get to a better place.
Hey, and thank you, Chris, for calling it like it is, but really trying to tone down the political rhetoric, because, again, we're getting people vaccinated and we can do this together. And I'm willing to work with you, with Republicans, with anyone else to get it done.
Appreciate you. You're welcome here. Doctor, be well. The best to you and your family.
Thank you.
Now, you heard what the Surgeon General said about workplace management. Okay, that takes you right into companies. Okay, big companies, private companies. They too are warning workers. Get your shot or you might lose your job. Now, what will this do? Will it dig in? Will it incentivize? What do the numbers show? And let's take something on right off the top. This idea, well, the unvaccinated, it's really not about Republicans or Trump people. It's really about minorities. Is it? The Wizard of Oz has the numbers. Next.